This Women's Month, the Golden Delight Foundation is launching a mobile mental wellness campaign to reach the women left furthest behind. In a country where many people live with depression, most of them women and mothers, one truth remains painfully clear. South African women are not okay, and most remain far from the help they need. The Golden Delight Foundation is proud to launch the Far From Okay campaign, a bold mobile mental wellness campaign dedicated to reaching women in South Africa's most undeserved and underserved areas, from remote villages and informal settlements to overlooked townships where access to mental health support is limited. Stigma runs deep and women carry burdens in silence. Now, to talk more about this, we're joined by a partner of the Far From Okay campaign, Thibedi Meso. Thibedi, good evening. Thank you so much for your time. Really do appreciate it. Only about over 27% of South Africans, which is one in every four South Africans, really, just over that, live with some form of mental illness. Depression, of course, being the most severe. Many of them don't have access to mental health care, particularly women in the most far-flung areas of our countries. How do we bridge the access gap, particularly for women?
Hi, Oliver. Thank you for having me, and good evening to the viewers. Look, I think the question of how do we bridge that gap is one that really got us started on this initiative, right? If you think about the stats and the numbers, 66% of public mental wellness facilities are in urban areas, and to your point, a lot of women are underserved, in rural and township communities. And that's really where we started the work to say, how can we bridge that gap? And for us, it was about bringing that care closer to them, So we literally, show up in communities, with therapists and a mobile mental wellness clinic or unit, and spend the day, talking to mothers around the community, mothers, aunts, sisters, who are, the caregivers, who take care of everyone in their communities. Some of these women are dealing with so many challenges. And for us, it was just that simple. How do we, bridge the gap is by showing up. We started the conversation by, raising awareness around the stats. Like I said, the limited access to mental health facilities. So yeah, I think, bridging the gap starts with just a little bit of action, and hopefully we inspire others to do the same.
What is the modality? Is it a peer-to-peer counseling model? Is it a group counseling model? And how much of the work that you guys are doing is supported and underpinned by the work of psychologists? We know that South Africa has a severe shortage of psychologists and psychiatrists, social workers included. In fact, part of the crisis of our mental wellness in this country has got to do with not enough resources across the board, not just for the poor. Of course, it's exacerbated for those who don't have access to those resources to begin with. But what is the modality to bring mental wellness closer to those who most need it?
So look, we did a bit of research. What we wanted to do is show up in a very authentic way that's going to create impact, for the community. So this was our first mobile mental wellness unit that we ran this afternoon. And what we did was partner with psychologists, counselors who are qualified, who we know would be able to offer the kind of help that the women we're talking to in those communities deserve. So the model, like you say, we just started, this is our first, what we'd call a pilot. And we're hoping to take this across the country. I think we took a lot of learnings from what we got today on the ground. But it is definitely about showing up and giving the mothers and women the dignity that, and the respect that they deserve, right? So what we like to call this in action is, what we call it is dignity in motion. So we do show up with qualified therapists, qualified counselors, like I said. And what we also do is try to partner with the communities. So one of the therapists that helped us today is a lady who grew up in Van der Bijl Park, which is where we had our activation this afternoon. So it's also quite nice for us to reach into the communities and find people who care about the places where they come from and are able to go back and give back to their communities.
A lot of the challenges that women in particular face are compounded. It's almost always inextricably tied one to the other. For instance, gender-based violence, childcare, community-based support, all of these are inextricably linked to each other. Is there a specific approach that has been adopted by the Far From Okay campaign that speaks to that intersection?
Look, what we didn't want to do is be exclusive in how we show up for these mothers and caregivers, right? I think at the core, that's what we're looking at. We're looking at women who are burdened, women who are taking on a lot in their communities, in their families, and never have the time to stop and pause and reflect and take care of themselves. We got a lot of feedback today in the sessions that we had, and some of the things that you mentioned, like gender-based violence, are a big issue in the communities. The women are facing those challenges. They also spoke a lot about, how hard it is to raise children in situations where fathers are absent in those scenarios. So we want to show up authentically, like I said, for the mothers, and for us, it's more about them than focusing on a specific thing that they're going through or that's challenging them. It's broad, the list is broad, so for us to focus on one particular thing, I think would just box us in. But we want to show up wholly for the mothers, so we look at everything that affects them in their communities.
Yeah, we're going to have to leave it there. Thibedi, thank you so much for your time this evening. Thank you so much for the work that you're doing, and all the best to the Far From OK campaign and the work that it's rolling out.